Hello, everybody. Thank you all so much for listening to Meaningless, where we look into the spread of nonsense online and try to understand what in the hell it all means. I am your humble host, Nate, and should I invite Bobby?
Oh, too late. I'm in.
I'm so glad you stuck with the theme of kind of screwing it up first. So, Bobby, Miss Bobbington.
Mm-hmm.
Bobblehead. I probably did Bobblehead, didn't I?
I don't know.
I'm sure I had to have
Probably. It seems like it's a pretty obvious one. Yeah.
I probably did Miss Grabobble.
I don't think that one.
Yeah, let's do Miss Grabobble.
I like that one, yeah.
Yeah. So I have a meme for you to look at, and I would like you to explain how it looks and how it reads to our listeners.
All right, I like this guy. Okay, so we got a big old Yosemite Sam here. He's got his guns out. He's ready to go. And at the top it says, "There's no such thing as strong coffee." At the bottom it says, "Just overly sensitive girly men." All right? He would think that.
All right, yeah. So I actually was coming across variations of this type of meme. Somebody had posted on Reddit something that one of their family members had posted to Facebook. The original meme that I saw read that there is no such thing as coffee that's too strong, just men that are too weak.
Okay.
Now, when I first saw this meme, I thought of a coffee recall from back in 2017. A product from the coffee maker Death Wish Coffee was pulled from the shelves, and I had always assumed that it was because Death Wish Coffee had too much caffeine. It was marketed as the strongest coffee globally, often labeled with, "Warning, world's strongest coffee," and even calling itself the galaxy's strongest coffee.
Wow.
Yeah, some strong coffee. I mean, honestly, it seems like a pretty safe bet that it's probably, if it's the strongest coffee in the world, it's probably the strongest coffee in the galaxy because,
Probably.
yeah, if
Probably
they
not
had,
a lot of other coffees out there.
yeah, I'd imagine if there was even something similar, it'd be called something else,
Probably.
but
It'd be kind of hilarious, though, if the little Mars rover found, like, a Starbucks.
yeah, I would be so upset because, like, there was when I went to the Forbidden City, in Beijing, there was a little coffee shop there, and I was told, like, inside the Forbidden City, and I was told that originally it was going to be a Starbucks.
Okay.
And you know how frustrated I would be. I was actually, while I was there, I was trying to avoid American culture. I was trying to immerse myself in Chinese culture and the Chinese language. You know how frustrated I would be in the Forbidden City, like within the walls, and there's a fucking Starbucks in there. That'd be so unbelievably irritating to me. And plus, Starbucks, it's overpriced, and in my opinion, that coffee's overly acidic too. But maybe I'm just one of those girly men that Yosemite Sam's talking about.
Good name.
But this product from Death Wish Coffee, it seemed like a bad idea to me at the time, which is probably why I had assumed that the recall was due to people maybe having like heart palpitations or something. An average cup of coffee has about 113 to 247 milligrams of caffeine in a 12-ounce cup.
Wow.
While Death Wish Coffee was reported to have as much as 708 milligrams of caffeine in a 12-ounce cup.
Wow.
Which is well over the 400 milligram limit that's recommended by for healthy adults by most healthcare professionals.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was kind of curious about what makes a bag of coffee grounds that much stronger than an average one. So I kind of looked into it, and apparently the process involves processing Robusta beans. So they process it where it's grown. They roast them at the manufacturing sites. And most coffees are made with Arabica beans, which have genetically lower caffeine content than Robusta beans. And then brewing and roasting techniques further affect the caffeine concentration in the coffee.
Okay.
Honestly, I had no idea that coffee could vary so dramatically in caffeine content.
Yeah, I'm surprised to hear that.
Yeah, but it turns out that wasn't the reason for the Death Wish recall.
Okay.
Apparently, the canning process of their nitro cold brew left the drink at high risk of botulism. They weren't the only coffee company affected by this, since canning low-acid foods, like some coffee drinks, has the potential for botulism contaminations. Essentially, any food with a pH higher than 4.6 has to be canned under pressure, which provides a temperature high enough to destroy the Clostridium botulinum spores that cause botulism.
Okay.
Regardless, I would argue that there is such a thing as coffee that's too strong, considering that a 12-ounce cup of regular brewed Death Wish coffee could lead to caffeine content far exceeding the maximum recommended by the FDA. And that's our episode. Thank you all so much for listening. I'm kidding. Actually, I kept reading because this meme got my brain all in a stir. I couldn't let go of certain curiosities regarding something a little more insidious about this type of meme. So, grab a dangerously strong beverage, sit back, and learn how to be a Manly Rube. Bobby, do you want to be a Manly Rube?
Oh, always.
Oh, yeah.
That's my dream.
Let me tell you how.
Okay, hit me.
The year is 1889. Pitcher Pud Galvin was on the mound. After having some games in his recent history that didn't quite live up to his reputation, Pud was about to pitch a game that would create one hell of a buzz.
I'm sorry, are you saying Pud?
Pud.
P-U-D?
Yeah, Pud got his nickname because his pitches were so powerful that it would turn batters into pudding.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
When I first read this nickname, I was picturing the metaphor as the batters being like gooified into like human pudding. But I guess at the time, the phrase was more similar to saying somebody has like jello legs.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah. It was a common phrase at that time.
Okay.
Also, I couldn't find any contemporary source calling him Pud. So I think he got that nickname posthumously. The reason this game would cause such a stir wasn't because Pud would pitch a really good game. It wasn't just because of that. But he would do so with the help of a special drug created by a brilliant scientist. In fact, Pud is widely considered to be the first American athlete to be openly doping. Dr. Charles Edward Brown Sicard had invented an elixir made from testicular blood, semen, and dog and guinea pig testicles, which Sicard had first tested on himself. So,
wow. It's a hell of a concoction.
Yeah. So in Sicard's time, the subject of experimentation was often the scientists themselves. In fact, Sicard suffered from lifelong gastric reflux as a consequence of sampling his own stomach acid using an absorbent material at the end of a string.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, that fucked him up for life. Like, for the rest of his life, he had gastric reflux.
I'm sure he did. Wow. You know, okay, so to be a doctor, you got to spend a lot of time in college, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you suppose this guy was like in college? I bet he had some stories.
Yeah. Well, actually, there are. So I didn't include this in the script because it didn't have anything to do with the subject, but there was one point where, as part of an experiment, he had covered himself in, I think it was like some kind of lacquer or something. And one of his students found his body like not moving, not conscious, nothing, just laying on the floor of the lab, all brown. This is a white dude, completely brown. And Sicard kind of reprimanded him a little bit for interrupting the experiment. This guy was nuts. He was. I became a big fan of this dude as I was reading about him.
I'm gonna have to check him out.
He is fantastic. I love this guy. So Sicard reported his findings of his elixir while subcutaneously injecting it. He reported that his physical strength had been returning, and being the ever-diligent scientist, also reported on the return of his cognitive abilities, his overall energy, and even the robustness of his stream when he urinated.
Wow.
Yeah, he wrote, "The average length of the jet during the 10 days that preceded the first injection was inferior by at least 1/4 of what it came to be during the 20 following days." Sicard, like most aging people, was also plagued with constipation, or as he put it, one of the most troublesome miseries of advanced life consists of the diminution of the power to defecate, a power which he reported had returned following his injections. He actually said that was the most radical change that he experienced, and I wondered if maybe the concoction he was injecting was just giving him diarrhea.
Probably, yeah.
Like, I don't doubt that grinding up, animal testicles and injecting it could lead to, maybe a bit of soft stools, as they say. So after Pud Galvin pitched a winning game using the elixir, the excitement around surrounding this treatment grew quickly. The Washington Post published an article stating that if there were any doubt in the elixir's efficacy, then Pud's performance on the mound should have put those doubts to rest. The elixir was such a huge sensation, there was even a song about it, and it went like this. The latest sensations, the Secard elixir that's making young kids of the withered and gray. There'll be no more pills or big doctor bills or planting of people in churchyard clay.
Wow.
That last line suggests no more death, and that is why Charles Edward Brown Secard is still alive today at 160 something.
Well, let's get him on the show. Here he is, folks.
No, unfortunately, I'm kidding. He died, and so did everybody else from that time.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. So Secard never made any money off of his elixir. In fact, he even provided it for free to his colleagues for, experimental purposes.
Sure.
So by all means, Secard doesn't seem to be a grifter of any kind. However, this didn't mean that others weren't willing to bank on the hype. His elixir, or at least things claiming to be the elixir, were sold with his name on it, but with no actual connection to him financially. There was widespread reporting of the efficacy of his tonic, but later experiments showed that the positive results were almost certainly a placebo effect, which kind of put to rest the claims of the 1889 paper or 1889 article in the Washington Post that said that Pud Galvin's game was proof that the elixir worked. Or at least one would think, but a quote from a 2009 article from the Washington Post reads, "The secret to Galvin's success, it may have been something called the Brown Secard elixir," as if they haven't learned anything in the past 120 years. Yeah, that was in the Washington Post, despite the fact that Pud became the first pitcher to win 300 games in 1888, the year before he pitched that elixir game.
Okay.
But studies involving testicular health had suggested that testicles had some connection to virility. Observations in animals and people who had lost the function of their testicles or lost them altogether seem to indicate this connection as well. Today, we understand that the male sex glands produce testosterone, but this wasn't really known in Pud and Secard's time. Finally, in 1935, Organon became the first drug manufacturer to isolate testosterone, and it took 220 pounds of bull testicles to obtain a thimbleful.
Wow. Those poor bulls.
Yeah. The problem is that testosterone's not stored in the testicles. It's a hormone that's produced on demand and flows through the bloodstream. So basically, people who eat bull testicles for the testosterone are barking up the wrong sack. And injecting testicles subcutaneously likely has no real effect on virility either.
All right.
Selling ineffective tonics to improve manliness sounds pretty familiar today. And over the years, there were various other treatments being sold to aging men to make them young and virile again. Even partial vasectomies, specifically the Steinach method, were sold as a form of rejuvenation, again resulting in what was most likely a placebo effect. The Steinach method involves tying off the vas deferens, which is the duct that leads from the testicles to the urethra. And this was popularized first in Vienna, I think. People were getting Steinached, as they called it. And men were touting about their regained creativity and vitality, and in at least one case, second puberty. Dude
That
went
would
through
suck.
dude went through a second puberty.
It wasn't any fun the first time. I don't want to do that again.
Yeah, no, I don't. So Dr. Eugene Steinach described his patients as, quote, changed from feeble, parched, dribbling drones to men of vigorous bloom who threw away their glasses, shaved twice a day, dragged loads up to 220 pounds, and even indulged in such youthful follies as buying land in Florida.
Whoa.
Yeah. And that is some good grifter nonsense if I've ever heard it.
Mm-hmm.
I love that he included committing youthful follies, or in other words, doing something fucking stupid, as a selling point of the procedure.
Well, sure.
Like-
Keeps your day interesting. You never know what you're going to do.
I picture him being like one of those doctors, like on, like, the old grifters, like with the cart that show up in town, and they sell some nonsense.
Balls of
Like,
snake oil.
come, let me pinch off one of your sack tubes and you'll be feeling dumber in no time. But Dr. Steinach rode that remasculinization wave pretty hard. He also had some pretty problematic beliefs about masculinity. He thought if he could surgically implant a straight man's testicle into a gay man's scrotum, he could turn that gay man straight.
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah. I can see how that would work.
I think so. That's not how being gay works.
No, not at all.
I think if you put a third testicle in a gay man, you're just going to get a really, really gay man. You might make him gayer. I think that's about if the surgery is successful. I know some gay guys who have more than enough testosterone. They're still quite gay.
Oh, yeah.
So transplanting testicles brings us to our next chapter in the masculinity grift, and also brings us to something that still plagues us and the internet to this day. Bobby, I'm going to show you a picture, and I want you to tell me what you're seeing. According to the 1986 documentary titled The Goat Gland Doctor, this is the first ever goat gland baby.
Ooh.
Yeah. But this, like many things I encounter while researching for this podcast, is insane nonsense. A man named Dr. John R. Brinkley, a practicing physician from California. Oh, wait. Turns out his medical degree is what I would call fraudulent. He got it from a diploma mill, essentially.
Cool.
So forget the doctor part. But that didn't stop him from offering surgeries that would revitalize male patients. Bobby, what do you think these surgeries involved?
Oh, probably nothing good.
He was taking goat testicles and grafting them into men's own glands inside of their scrota.
So he was adding goat testicles.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Obviously, this treatment doesn't work.
Obviously.
You can't just start putting goat balls into people and hope for the best.
Wow.
Yeah. In fact, 42 patients, many of whom were reportedly healthy when they walked into Not a Dr. Brinkley's clinic, had their death certificates signed by him.
Yeah, I believe that. Oh, God.
The documentary I mentioned is bafflingly, that's a dumb word. Why would I even put that in the script? The documentary I mentioned is bafflingly, whatever. It's ridiculously flattering toward this dude, especially considering that he was met with disgrace before his death, and this documentary was made posthumously. I learned some incredibly hilarious things about this dude, but as I was reading, I realized that there had to be a Behind the Bastards episode on this guy, and I looked it up, and Robert Evans did do an episode on Brinkley. I will be listening to that after we record, but as not to spoil anything, I won't go into too much detail about this dude, but I had to include Brinkley in this podcast because there was an important through line here. This meme got me thinking. So the meme about men who are too weak got me thinking about how romanticized versions of masculinity are used to sell nonsense to dupes. I came across Pud Galvin, the baseball player, when I was looking into the earliest things sold to the public as masculinizing products. I wanted to find, what was the earliest, man-making supplement or whatever, whatever market nonsense I could find. What was the earliest one? And that one that I found from Dr. Sicard, from all I could read in his writings and about who he was and stuff, I think that he sincerely believed in his elixir.
Yeah.
And he didn't make any money off of it. And he didn't sell to anybody, but some people did, or at least tried to. And this idea of using the testicles of other animals to revitalize the masculinity of humans gained traction after that Bud Galvin game. Mm-hmm. So the widespread hype regarding making men virile again had become a rich market for grifters, and in fact, the goat gland bastard, suddenly wanting to play surgeon, had traveled to Chicago to be a surgeon. He had studied in Chicago for a number of years. He failed his class and didn't seem to care when he reportedly told his professor, quote, "I have a scheme up my sleeve and the whole world will know about it."
Uh-oh.
It sure fucking did. Now, sure, Brinkley essentially purchased his medical degree from a known diploma mill called the Eclectic Medical University of Kansas City, making his degree not quite authentic, in my opinion. The Eclectic Medical University of Kansas City was a known diploma mill. People were aware that you could easily just get a diploma from them. And also, eclectic medicine was not really widely recognized at the time and really shouldn't be, you know.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, he wasn't an actual medical doctor, but he did have something more important than a medical degree. Now, what's more important than a medical degree? If you want to sell nonsense to rubes, I want you to try to guess what would be more important than a medical degree.
Oh, I don't know. A law degree. And get yourself out of trouble later.
That actually what may have helped this dude out later on in life. But no, he had KFKB, the Sunshine Station in the heart of the nation. We want to broadcast sunshine. That's right, not a Dr. Billy Balls had a radio station because no good Montebank, had to use that word, can be without a platform. And he really did say that Sunshine Station thing. He bought a radio tower, and KFKB became only the 4th commercially licensed radio station in the United States. So this dude was probably the first radio grifter to sell nonsense to dudes trying to be manly.
Right.
It's such a common practice now.
Yeah.
So he started this radio station specifically to promote his goat nuts treatment. And in selling this treatment, Brinkley said, quote, "A man is only as old as his glands, and his glands as old as his sex glands," which is some grade A grifter nonsense. Also, like many grifters, fake Dr. Goatnads didn't shy away from using his supposed Christian faith as some sort of beacon of integrity. This isn't me taking a shot at all Christian people or anything like that, but it is always worth noting how often these charlatans use Christianity to virtue signal and to dupe people into thinking that they're trustworthy.
Yeah.
Of course, the treatment was not an easy sell to people, both because of the price, which I found some sources saying it was $700 for the treatment and others saying $750, which is a big difference in 1920s.
Yeah.
But either way, that's over $11,000 today. It was also a hard sell because of the, putting goat balls into your sack. The treatment had not been without controversy. So Brinkley began offering something that he said was even more affecting. It was an even more effective revitalizing therapy. It was a medicine known as Formula 1020. It could treat erectile dysfunction and even make insane people sane again.
Cool.
Yeah, it was a griftalizing, fraudulizing, bullshitalizing tonic that during Brinkley's highly publicized libel trial was revealed to be nothing but colored water.
Nice.
Yeah. So some of the problems that I had with the documentary on Brinkley was that, it was overly flattering toward him long after he had been exposed as a fraud. They have an interview with his wife, Minnie Brinkley, who seems to still be kind of selling the grift with, clear bullshit about the efficacy of John Brinkley's clinic. And she was even bragging about how much money they had made. It's insane. But the most important thing, the thing that I think is the most egregious about the documentary is that it neglects to emphasize, first off, neglects to emphasize how much of a fraud Brinkley was, of course, but more importantly, the goat gland baby, the one, so supposedly this baby had been born to a man who was having trouble conceiving, and Brinkley stuck goat nuts inside him, and then they had this baby, right? So This is supposed to be, proof of that this treatment exists, and this was the first ever goat gland baby. The documentary completely misses the fact that the kid's nickname was Billy. That's vital information.
Yeah.
Now, I don't doubt that Billy's conception was damn near miraculous, but that would be in spite of the goat scrote and not thanks to it. So, after some tumultuity regarding his reputation as not a doctor, Brinkley invited the Kansas State Medical Review Board to come watch him perform 2 of his transplant operations, and they watched it and revoked his license the next day.
Good.
Yeah. I'm just really glad that we're past all that and we don't have grifters broadcasting their nonsense male treatments to the public anymore.
Yeah, never happens.
Yep. Okay, maybe I spoke too soon, but at least radio grifters in this era sell real man-making products like Alex Jones. I'm not sure who that is, but he sounds pretty trustworthy. He used to sell a supplement called Super Male Vitality, and as not to leave the ladies out, he also started selling Super Female Vitality.
Oh, good.
And Jones knows that men need their own specific supplement because masculinity requires its own special enhancement, right?
Mm-hmm.
But don't take my word for it. Let's hear it in Alex Jones' own words.
Oh, good.
For female vitality is the same as super male vitality. We got a good shipment of it.
Wait, did he say what it? Hold on. Let me try. Let's try a different clip.
Listening to the Alex super male vitality, super female vitality is pretty much the same formula.
Huh. But the super male vitality I thought would make me extra manly. If it's the same as the super female vitality, what's that supposed to mean?
Well, you said there were minor differences. Like, I bet the male one comes in blue and the female one comes in pink.
Yeah, plus, just now remembering who Alex Jones is, I know he lies a lot, so maybe he's lying about this. Except I found the labels for each of the supplements, and I found them from an Australian Amazon seller, and they are, in fact, the same thing. So Alex Jones is no longer selling this supplement, likely due to legal financial reasons surrounding a huge lawsuit that he lost. But according to NPR, he did try selling the products. He did try selling supplements on Amazon long after his website store supposedly discontinued the product, which led to me trying to find out if this Amazon seller was just him in disguise. I got real suspicious about that. But I found that seller's eBay account, and they don't appear to be associated with Alex Jones or InfoWars. They just sell a bunch of old shit products. I couldn't find the same product with a different name that he's selling or anything like that. Essentially, why Jones was willing to admit that the 2 products are the same in that moment was that he had to clearance out his stock of supplements, and the last of the Super Male Vitality had sold out. Mm-hmm. So he had to admit that the super female is the same to try to sell the rest of those too.
You could have just changed the box.
No, see that's there was in the in the bottles and stuff, So, and I'm sure, I'm sure there's some kind of the supplement market is not well regulated, but I'm sure there's probably some problem with opening them up and pouring them in a different bottle or whatever. But it was the last of their supply. I don't even know if he had any empty Super Male Vitality bottles around or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, it's still there was one point in his show too. I had to listen to a few clips of it. But he does say they're the same. It's the same product. It's just women. They like the pink and they like the different colors or whatever. And so
we want it to be pretty.
No, it was a con is what it was. It put the same thing in 2 different bottles. And I don't know. Anyway, Super Male Vitality is gone. Bobby, it cannot hurt us anymore.
Good.
Now, I should specify that there's no verifiable evidence that Super Male Vitality was hurting anyone, and the South Francisco Chronicle lab tested Super Male Vitality and found it basically to just be ineffective, at least for the substances that they test for. Super Male Vitality, it's about as effective as goat graft's aforementioned colored water. Listening to my favorite podcast of all time, Knowledge Fight, which has over 1,100 episodes, all of which are making fun of and analyzing claims from Alex Jones. It comes up sometimes that Jones would go kind of batshit after taking some of his supplements on his show, which led to me trying to find out if there were any undeclared substances in Super Male Vitality. Specifically, there were 2 substances I was curious about specifically, and there wasn't actually anything found by the FDA or anywhere else. There was a paper claiming to have detected the supplement to be contaminated with lead, But I found that claim to be somewhat dubious, and at least looking into Labdoor, a company that tests various products for drug and chemical contaminants, found that super male vitality and super female vitality had heavy metal levels that were below safe levels determined by California's Prop 65.
Okay.
So not really any serious lead contaminants
That's good,
that
I
was
guess.
found. Labdoor also noted that the daily dose of 1.25 mils of the supplement wasn't even enough volume to contain biologically significant levels of the listed ingredients.
Oh my god.
What I did find, though, is that there were a lot of male supplements, male vitality supplements, not specifically sold by Alex Jones, that did contain one or two specific undeclared drug ingredients, namely sildenafil and tadalafil, the active ingredients in the erectile dysfunction drugs Viagra and Cialis.
Okay.
Unfortunately, knowing how dude brains work, this would be a selling point for these products.
Yeah.
So I also know it wouldn't do much good to emphasize the risks being taken when you take medications that weren't prescribed to you, so I will read something that is more likely to get their attention. This is a quote from the Annals of Indian Psychiatry. Quote, one of the most concerning psychological effects of sildenafil is the potential for dependency, particularly when the drug is used recreationally or without medical necessity. Men who use sildenafil to enhance sexual performance may begin to feel that they cannot perform sexually without the aid of the drug, leading to psychological reliance. Over time, sildenafil may come to be viewed as an essential part of sexual encounters, regardless of whether ED is present. This psychological dependence can take various forms. For some individuals, the anxiety of not achieving the same level of sexual performance without the sildenafil can become overwhelming. Men may feel insecure about their sexual abilities, believing that they are only capable of satisfying their partner when using the drug. This can lead to a cycle of anxiety and reliance where the individual feels increasing pressure to continue using sildenafil to meet sexual expectations. Moreover, this over-reliance can lead to an exacerbation of performance anxiety. When individuals become conditioned to rely on sildenafil for sexual performance, they may struggle with erectile dysfunction in its absence, even if they initially had no issues. So,
Interesting.
yeah. So, if you want to risk not being able to get boners again, yeah, go ahead. Take those supplements. I figured that's more likely to get dudes' attention than than the fact that it's dangerous to take those medications if you weren't prescribed them.
Well, you got your priorities.
Right? Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, it's unfortunate, but that's probably how dude brains are going to work.
Yep.
So, while a lot of masculinizing products or products sold as male enhancement contain sildenafil and tadalafil, luckily super male vitality did not. Which is likely more dangerous, is Alex Jones selling fake coronavirus treatments to people, to his listeners, and he had received a cease and desist from the New York Attorney General for that.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah, during the pandemic, coronavirus treatments briefly overshadowed male enhancement in the bullshit supplement market.
Yeah.
But you know what, Bobby? I don't fall for this nonsense.
Good.
I stick with natural masculinizing tactics. When it comes to that, there's only one king, the Liver King. So...
Okay.
Turns out Robert did an episode on this guy too, and I'm extra excited to listen to that episode because a friend of our podcast is on that episode.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Our buddy Dr. Kaveh Hoda is on that one.
Nice.
Yeah. For listeners, if you want to hear your humble host, me, as a guest on Kaveh's podcast, it's episode 297 of the House of Pod. I'm on there along with hepatologist Dr. Elliot Tapper. So it was me and two hepatologists. Yeah. One of these things is not like the others. One of these things doesn't belong. No, I had a lot of fun being on this show. But for the record, I think that being a hepatologist makes Kaveh and Dr. Tapper true liver kings, unlike our self-proclaimed liver king, Brian Johnston. So, Johnson
Didn't we work with
believes...
that guy? Brian Johnson?
Brian Johnson?
Yeah.
Yeah, did we worked with
Yeah,
Brian.
we worked with
yeah,
Brian.
yeah, that's right. Shit, we worked with Brian.
Just get him on the show. Real quick, what's a hepatologist? Herpetologist?
Hepatologist, yeah,
Hepatologist?
liver doctor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, specifically the liver? Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Alright.
Kavi's a gastroenterologist and he's a hepatologist, like
Okay.
specializes in the liver.
Gotcha.
So, Brian Johnson, that's right, our old coworker. Johnson believes that men are going through depression because they don't have enough manly figures telling them that they need to be manlier and how to be manlier.
Sure. Okay.
I think he might have something backwards there, but whatever. Something I want to be forthright with is that a lot of grifts are sold based on what sounds right. It sounds right that men are weaker today because it fits the stereotypes of like kids these days, you know?
Yeah.
It sounds right that vaccines cause autism because kids are vaccinated right around the time that diagnoses usually happen. The Liver King, Brian Johnson, was selling an idea that sounded right about manliness. He is a massively muscular guy with a huge beard. So he embodies the classic idea of what masculinity supposedly is.
Okay.
And his message is to follow what he calls a primal lifestyle. You see, it sounds right that we should eat more like our ancestors because their diet must be how our bodies evolved to survive.
Okay.
It sounds right, and it's a simple idea, so it's easy to sell.
Right.
Notice I have not called what he does a grift. I'm just saying he's selling an idea that sounds right. But, Bobby, manliness doesn't come from foraging berries or eating bugs. So if that's what you were thinking with a primal lifestyle, no, it comes from eating nothing but meat, raw meat. Because salads don't sound manly, and cooking meat destroys all those delicious nutrients that made our ancestors so masculine, like E. coli and parasitic worms.
Yay, worms.
You see, it sounds right that we should eat like our primal ancestors, which is probably why Alex Jones used to sell bone broth. And it sounds right that the way to eat primally is to tear into the meat without cooking it. It sounds right, and more importantly, it sounds like an easy answer. Building muscle requires work. Getting large and muscular requires work. But effort is not always an appealing answer. There needs to be a magic fix, like eating raw meat or taking a masculinizing supplement. At least Johnson isn't selling us some bottle of nonsense to take, right? Introducing King. King is an integral part of an advanced athletic training and nutrition regimen that supports testicular function, hormone health, strength, and libido. King combines nature's most nutrient-dense superfoods to support manhood, virility, and the fittest version of you. Bobby, are you ready to hear what these superfoods are?
Yeah, what are they?
Yeah. All right. Now, usually when I hear superfoods, they're what, like the beet market is like it's slow, so they need to sell more beets, or like suddenly blueberries have a special antioxidant or whatever, That's usually what I think of when I think of superfoods. No. That's not manly. These superfoods are beef heart, bone marrow, liver, and nuts. Beef testicles.
Always with the testicles with these guys.
Well, it's because balls make men manly, and it sounds right that eating balls must make men manlier.
Well, you are what you eat, right?
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you want to be a great big testicle, I love how we just keep swinging back to testicles this whole thing. And who could argue with the results? The Liver King is huge, possibly due to his diet of raw meat and steroids. That's right. Nothing but raw meat and steroids. Yeah, it looks like in 2022, Johnson admitted that he had been using steroids.
No.
This led to some lawsuits accusing Johnson of being misleading. He is super manly, though. He's still super manly, though, Bobby.
Yeah.
In fact, he's going to fight Joe Rogan.
Okay.
Yeah. Liver King Brian Johnson, with no martial arts training whatsoever, challenged Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt Joe Rogan to a one-on-one match.
Hold on. When's this going to be on? We got to do this. We could do a live recording for the podcast.
I will say, the Liver King's huge. Brian Johnson is huge. He's a big, muscular guy. But Joe Rogan is a trained martial artist, so my money's on Rogan. Honestly,
being big doesn't mean anything.
Yeah,
It
it's
just means
true.
you're a better target.
It's true. I watched when I was in China. I watched a match between a kung fu guy and a sumo wrestler, and the kung fu guy won.
Yeah.
The sumo wrestler tapped out when the kung fu guy was punching him in the head.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a kung
That's
fu
fair.
guy was punching me in the head. I'd tap out too.
Oh yeah.
Liver King, he documented his travels to meet up with Rogan. This led all the way up to Johnson being arrested because Joe Rogan was not aware of this fight. The two men do not know each other. The police caught wind of Johnson wanting to fight, discovered that Johnson was traveling to Rogan's hometown, and the cops asked Rogan if he was in on this. Rogan essentially said, "I don't fucking know that dude," and agreed to press charges.
So he was just going to walk up to his door, knock, and beat the shit out of him in the doorway? What was he doing? I thought you were going to announce a pay-per-view match or something.
Well, Joe Rogan was not engaging with them. So essentially,
okay.
Yeah, essentially what had happened was that I think that Rogan touched on the fact that Brian Johnson had been using steroids. Mm-hmm. I think Joe Rogan mentioned that in his podcast, and Johnson kind of blames Rogan for the backlash that he received for doing it. I mean, I kind of blame Johnson's own behavior
a little bit, yeah. But he called him out on it. So it's clearly Joe Rogan's fault.
Yeah, right. And so Johnson was charged with terroristic threat. On November 12th last year, the charges were dropped, and 13 days later, Johnson posted another rant similar to those that led to him being charged in the first place.
Oh my God.
Johnson still wants to fight Rogan and said that his previous callouts were not a threat, but a challenge to a professional fight, adding an eyebrow-raising phrase, "You can't run forever. Eventually you'll have to say something." And that you can't run for everything. That's
not good.
Yeah. Now, there are signs of toxic masculinity like this in a lot of places. But that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with wanting to be manly or wanting to embody some of the things that have been classically considered manly. Big muscles, hardworking, things like that. There's nothing wrong with any of that. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with any of that. But anyone seeking ways to be stronger or more masculine should keep in mind that as men, feeling inadequate leads us vulnerable to grifters. A lot of times, unrealistic standards of masculinity are put on display for the sake of playing us all for chumps. And a lot of what we think make us more manly are based on fiction and fantasy. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, chasing after supposedly manly attributes can lead in the opposite direction of the desired effects. Being tough about how little sleep you get can make you weaker both mentally and physically. Buying ineffective male supplements makes you weaker financially with nothing to show for it. Taking sexual enhancement products can lead to psychological dependence. Eating raw meat exposes you to the risk of diseases that can rob you of your energy and even your life. I think one of the most important lessons to learn here is that the most tremendously demonstrating masculinizing effect was that of a placebo, which I believe suggests that most of us have a lot more energy and strength inside than we realize. We don't need bullshit supplements or to eat raw meat or inject ourselves with testicles to find out. Mm-hmm. So, Bobby, what do you think?
I think you shouldn't buy stuff from the internet.
Just anything?
Pretty much, yeah. Do your research.
Just give up on it.
Just go to the grocery store. It's probably fine. If it's on a shelf, it's been approved.
Yeah, my thing is that if it sounds like a magic bullet, or if it sounds like an easy fix, or if it sounds like, why haven't I heard of this before? It's probably because it's bullshit.
Yeah, it's too good to be true. Yeah,
it's probably bullshit. I don't think that there's any masculinizing supplements out there. No. I don't doubt that people believe that they've received benefits from some of these things, but just like earlier, the guy injecting himself with testicles, he thought that that was really working, and he was able to lift more, and he peed further and stuff,
Yeah.
And I think a lot of, and most people who look into the history of that, and every scientist who looked into the efficacy of injecting testicles and even finding testosterone in testicles, anybody who looked into that found that it was most likely to be a placebo effect. And so I don't doubt that there are people who think that they've gotten a lot out of some of these supplements. And in healthcare, a lot of times what we say is like, if it seems to be working for somebody, don't take that from them.
Right.
But I would also recommend not relying on these things. If you haven't tried anything, just talk to a doctor, if it's a serious issue. Don't buy these dumb man supplements, and be suspicious of anything telling you how to be manly. I think the best way to be manly is just be happy with who you are. If you want to be more masculine, do some masculine things and healthy masculine things.
Go lift some weights, but not too much.
Go lift some weights. Yeah. Don't give yourself a hernia.
No.
Don't tear a muscle.
That's not good.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you all so much for listening. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.